The conference room was silent. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the shuffle of chairs, and the sound of my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I sat at the long mahogany table, surrounded by faces I had known for decades, employees I had hired, trained, mentored, people who once called me a second mother. And now, all of them were watching, waiting, unsure what to do as my daughter-in-law, Heather, stood at the head of the table in her tailored navy suit and declared the end of my career. "We don't need outdated people in this company anymore," she said, her voice sharp and clinical, as if she were announcing quarterly earnings and not dismantling someone's dignity. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. I just stared at her, feeling the weight of every word settle over me like a thick fog. I was 65 years old. I'd built this company alongside my late husband from nothing. I had sacrificed weekends, holidays, sleep, and health. I had given my life to this place. And now I was being asked to walk away with nothing but a cardboard box. I glanced around the room. No one met my eyes. Some looked down at their notepads. A few shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One young woman, Rachel from accounting, looked like she might cry. I stood up slowly, smoothed the front of my blazer, and offered Heather a calm smile. "Good luck," I said softly. My voice was steady, but my hands were cold. That's when the door opened. Everyone turned. And there he was, my son Michael, tall, polished, still in his travel clothes, with a look of confusion and urgency on his face. "Mom?" he asked, stepping into the room. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. I just looked at Heather. She had turned pale. Her perfectly composed expression faltered for the first time. I didn't know what was about to happen, but I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Before all this, before the betrayal, before the public humiliation, I was just a mother with a dream. Not a big dream. Not one for fame or power. I simply wanted to build a life for my son and give him a future brighter than the one I had. My name is Elaine Turner. I was 28 when my husband, Mark, and I launched Turner Company out of a rented garage space. We had no money, but we had grit. Mark was the numbers guy. I was the organizer, the negotiator, the glue. Together, we turned late nights into contracts and small wins into big partnerships. Then, 5 years in, he got sick. Pancreatic cancer. By the time they found it, we had less than a year left with him. I watched the strongest man I knew fade away, while still managing payroll, handling vendors, and keeping the office running. When Mark passed, Michael was 15. I remember standing in our kitchen after the funeral, looking at my teenage son trying to hold it together. And I knew this company couldn't fall apart, not just for our employees, not just for the business, for Michael, for our family's legacy. I came back to work the next Monday like nothing had changed. I smiled when clients visited. I chaired the board meetings, I signed checks, and when I got home, I cooked dinner, helped with homework, folded laundry. For years, I carried both roles, CEO and mom, without complaining. Michael went to college, graduated with honors, and eventually joined the company. I was proud, even though I knew deep down that my job wasn't just building spreadsheets anymore. It was slowly handing over what I'd built. And I was okay with that. You see, sacrifice is quiet. It doesn't ask for applause. You do it because you love someone, because you want to see them thrive. I never expected a statue or a plaque, but I also never expected to be discarded like a worn-out tool. Now, standing in that conference room, I wondered if any of them truly knew what it had cost me. The sleepless nights, the birthday parties missed, the vacations postponed, the back pain, the lonely dinners, all the things I'd given up to make sure this company, this family survived. But I said nothing. Because real sacrifice doesn't need recognition. It only needs the truth to come out, and eventually it will. I still remember the first time I met Heather. Michael had called me a few days before, his voice bright and boyish in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Mom, there's someone I'd really like you to meet. She's special." It was the first time he'd ever used that word about someone he was dating. I spent the next 2 days deep cleaning the house, ironing napkins, and preparing his favorite pot roast, just like I used to when he came home from college. Heather arrived on a Sunday afternoon. She was stunning. Tall, blonde, elegant in that effortless kind of way that makes you question your own posture. Her handshake was firm, her smile flawless. She complimented the roast, asked about old photos, and laughed in all the right places when I told stories about Michael's childhood. To anyone else, she was perfect, educated, polished, warm, but there was something off. Maybe it was the way she kept looking around the house like she was cataloging it, or the slight pause before she answered questions about her own past, or how she subtly corrected Michael's stories, as if she needed to control the narrative. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just protective, that I was looking for flaws because no one was ever going to be good enough for my son. So I smiled. I welcomed her. I tried to believe what Michael believed. But deep inside, I couldn't shake the feeling. There was a calculation behind that charm, a quiet hunger behind the smile. Heather didn't just want to be loved. She wanted to be in control. It didn't happen overnight. At first, it was little things. Michael started dressing differently: sleek suits, expensive shoes, cufflinks I'd never seen before. "Heather helped me pick this out," he said once, running a hand over his jacket. "She's got amazing taste." Then came the apartment makeover. Gone were the cozy shelves, the framed photos, the slightly scuffed coffee table Michael and I had built together one summer. Everything now looked like a catalog, beautiful, impressive, impersonal. Our weekly lunches, once sacred, became maybe next week, and Heather made plans. When we did meet, she was usually there, charming, engaged, gently steering the conversation away from anything personal. And Michael, my sweet, open-hearted son, didn't seem to notice. He laughed less. He checked his phone more. And slowly, I began to realize something devastating. I was being replaced. Not by another woman in his heart, but by someone who was rewriting his world, one subtle shift at a time. And the worst part, Michael seemed happy. He was in love. He felt supported. He thought he was thriving. So I kept quiet. Because what kind of mother sabotages her son's happiness over a gut feeling? But it hurt. It hurt watching him forget traditions. Forget who he was before her. Forget the things that had once made him, well, him. It was as if Heather wasn't just changing the furniture, she was remodeling the man. And every time I stepped into his life, I felt like a guest, no longer at home, no longer needed. I still remember the first Christmas after they married. Heather decided we'd host at their place. "It'll be more elegant," she said. She served a catered dinner, dimmed the lights, and turned on ambient jazz instead of carols. It was lovely, sophisticated, cold. And when Michael toasted to new traditions, I smiled. But inside, a part of me quietly broke. Because sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come with shouting or cruelty. They come wrapped in silk ribbons and soft voices that gently push you out of the frame. Until one day you realize you're no longer in the picture at all. The quarterly review meeting was scheduled like any other. I walked into the conference room with my usual notebook and pen, still doing what I'd done for the past 37 years, showing up. I didn't notice anything unusual at first, just the usual small talk, coffee cups, shuffling chairs. Then Heather walked in. She wasn't holding the latest reports, she didn't have any charts or updates. What she had was a decision. One I realized, slowly, I hadn't been invited to contribute to. She stood at the head of the table, looked around, and said it plainly, almost casually. "We've decided to make a leadership change." No discussion, no review, no acknowledgement of my decades of service. Just a clean, cold announcement, like she was cutting a ribbon, or worse, a cord. "We appreciate everything you've done, Elaine," she continued, her voice unnervingly smooth, "but we're moving in a different direction. It's time for a new generation of leadership." I remember blinking. Once, twice, waiting for someone to speak, for anyone to say this was a mistake. But they didn't. They looked down, looked away. Some were shocked. A few were tearful. But no one moved. And Heather, she never broke eye contact. She didn't gloat. She didn't gloat because she didn't have to. She knew she'd won. And worse, she knew I wouldn't fight her, not in front of everyone. "I'd like you to clear out your office by the end of the day," she said. My voice, when it came, surprised even me. Calm, even. "Well," I said, "I suppose that's that." I stood, picked up my notebook, and walked out with my head held high. I didn't give her the satisfaction of tears. But as I reached the elevator, something inside me whispered, "She's not doing this out of ambition, she's doing it out of fear." And I was right. She didn't want me out of the company. She needed me out. Oh. Because somewhere along the way I had started asking the right questions. And I was getting too close to the truth. I went home that afternoon with a cardboard box in my arms and 1,000 thoughts in my head. I placed the box gently on my kitchen table and stood there, staring at it. Inside were 3 picture frames, a chipped coffee mug, a wilted plant, and the remnants of a career built over nearly 4 decades. But I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't heartbroken, because something didn't sit right. Heather had been waiting for this. It wasn't a sudden decision. It was rehearsed, clean, precise, and that made me suspicious. I opened my laptop out of habit more than anything else. My access to the company systems should have been revoked by now, but it wasn't. And there it was, my full administrative dashboard, still live. That's when I saw it. A series of internal fund transfers. At first, the amounts were small, $2,000 here, $5,000 there. But over the past 6 months, they had grown. A recent transfer showed $50,000 moved to a consulting firm I didn't recognize. I clicked deeper. The name on the authorizations made my blood run cold. M. Evans. Michael. Or someone using his credentials. I scrolled through pages of transactions. 23 unauthorized transfers. All signed by Heather and supposedly approved by Michael. Was my son involved? I didn't want to believe it. Couldn't. But I had to know the truth. I printed every document, every signature page, every financial summary. My hands trembled as I fed the paper into the printer. If Michael was part of this, if Heather had convinced him to push me out so they could bury something, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was criminal. The sound of a car door slamming outside made me freeze. I peeked through the curtain. Michael's car was in the driveway. He was home, early, and judging by his face, something wasn't right. He rushed to the door, not even knocking. "Mom," he said breathlessly, "what happened today?" "Heather said you quit, but I've been getting calls all afternoon. People are saying you were fired, and something about embezzlement?" I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my little boy. I saw a man about to face a truth he wasn't ready for. "Sit down, Michael," I said, my voice low and steady. "We need to talk." Michael didn't sit right away. He stood there, tense, fists clenched, trying to hold on to the version of the story he hoped was true. But hope is a fragile thing when it's built on lies. I slid the folder across the table toward him. Dozens of printed pages, transaction logs, email alerts, signature authorizations, all in black and white, all leading to one place. Heather. He opened the folder slowly, as if afraid of what he might find. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second, then the third. With each line, the color drained from his face. This is my name," he said quietly, pointing to a signature. "But I didn't sign this. I wasn't even in the office that day. I was in Chicago." He looked up at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "She forged my name." I nodded. "And the money?" "Over 200,000, I said gently, all routed through fake vendor accounts. Some registered in Delaware, others offshore." He pressed a hand to his forehead and sat down hard in the chair across from me. For a moment he didn't say anything. Then he whispered, "How could she do this?" I didn't answer, because sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Michael looked up, pain etched across his features. "She told me you were retiring, that you'd said you were ready to step away. She made it sound like your decision." "She needed me gone," I said quietly, because I was the only one asking the right questions. He shook his head. "I feel like a fool." "You're not," I replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. "You trusted her. That's not foolish. That's love." He let out a shaky breath. "What do we do now?" "We find out how deep this goes," I said. "We gather everything, and then we go to the authorities." He nodded, slowly. Then something in his expression shifted, a flicker of anger, of resolve. "She didn't just lie to me," he said. "She stole from the company. She tried to erase you. And she almost succeeded." I could see it now, his faith in Heather cracking under the weight of facts. Not gossip. Not emotion, just truth. Cold, clear, unforgiving. Michael stood up, taller now, stronger. "We're going to fix this," he said. "And she's going to answer for every lie." And just like that, the man I'd raised was back. Not broken. Awake. The next morning, we arrived at the office before sunrise. It felt strange walking back in after being escorted out just a day earlier, but this time I wasn't alone. Michael walked beside me, silent but focused, his shoulders squared, his jaw clenched. He unlocked the front door with his own key, and we moved quickly through the empty halls. Heather wasn't in yet. We went straight to her office. Michael opened her desk drawers while I booted up her computer. Her passwords were easy to guess. She'd always underestimated how much attention I paid. It didn't take long. Emails between Heather and a man named Marcus Webb, dozens of them, romantic, strategic, sinister. Discussions about transferring company funds, faking invoices, building a narrative to push me out. Then we found something worse. Drafts of a divorce petition against Michael accusing him of emotional abuse, financial control, isolation. All carefully worded, all backed by fabricated messages, time-stamped photos, and phony witness statements. "She's been planning this for months," Michael muttered, scrolling through the files. "Maybe longer." He paused. "Mom," he said, pointing to a file labeled Elaine Risk Archive. I opened it. There were screenshots of my activity logs, emails I'd opened, financial reports I had viewed. "She's been monitoring everything I do," I whispered. "Every move." Then we heard it heels clicking down the hallway. Heather was early. Michael looked at me. I nodded. "Let's do this." She stepped into the doorway and froze. We were already seated in her office. "Mitchell," she said sweetly, eyes narrowing, "and Elaine, I thought we discussed your access being revoked." Michael didn't flinch. "Sit down," he said flatly. Heather hesitated, then walked in slowly, her smile brittle, her eyes darting between us. "I assume you've found something?" she said. "I've found everything," Michael replied. He laid the papers out across her desk, emails, transfers, the forged signatures. "I trusted you," he said, voice low. "I let you into my life, my company, my family." She stayed silent, the smile gone. "You betrayed all of it." For the first time since I'd met her, Heather had no words. Just silence. And that silence told us everything we needed to know. 6 months later, I sat in my old office. The same office Heather had once stripped clean. The photos were back on the walls. My coffee mug still chipped sat beside my favorite pen. The little succulent on the windowsill had survived, despite everything. The company was healing. It hadn't been easy. We'd spent weeks talking to lawyers, meeting with investigators, rebuilding the trust Heather had so carelessly broken. But we made it. Michael never looked back. He filed for divorce the same day we confronted her. And when the federal investigation confirmed what we suspected, that Heather, or rather Amanda, had done this before in 3 other states, he didn't flinch. He faced every court date, every meeting, every consequence. And somewhere in that storm, something changed in him. He began to smile again. Not the tight, polite smile Heather had molded, but the crooked, honest one I hadn't seen in years. One evening he stopped by my office after hours, 2 coffees in hand. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said. Her name was Claire, a school teacher. Thoughtful, kind, with eyes that looked straight at you, not through you. She made Michael laugh without trying. And this time, I wasn't afraid. Because sometimes, the pain doesn't just break you, it reshapes you. It teaches you to listen more carefully, to love more honestly, to stand a little taller. Heather thought she was erasing me. But all she did was remind me who I really was. And who my son still is. We didn't just survive her. We reclaimed everything she tried to take. Betrayal doesn't always leave scars on the skin. Most of the time, it lives in the quiet places, the hesitation before you trust again, the double check before you believe what someone says, the long pause before you say I'm okay and mean it. Heather left behind more than a financial mess. She left behind questions, doubts, wounds that didn't bleed but still hurt. But here's what she didn't destroy. She didn't break the bond between a mother and son. She didn't erase the legacy of integrity we built over decades. And she didn't take away our ability to rebuild stronger, clearer, together. I still think about the way she looked at me that final morning like I was a threat she couldn't quite eliminate. And maybe, in a way, I was. Because I refused to let her story become our story. Michael still carries the weight of what happened. Some days, the shame creeps back in the how did I not see it kind, and I remind him gently, you saw what she wanted you to see. That's not weakness. That's love. There's no shame in believing in someone. Only in refusing to believe the truth once it's clear. Today Michael leads the company with steady hands. Claire sits in the front row at every company event, beaming like someone who believes in second chances. And me. I still show up. Still lead. Still love. Because healing isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every day to open your heart again, to keep showing up even after you've been hurt. If you've ever been betrayed, I want you to remember this. The people who lie, manipulate, and steal may shake your world, but they don't get to define you. You do. And your strength doesn't come from never being broken. It comes from rising after you are. So if this story touched something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment. Share your story. You never know who needs to hear that they're not alone. And if you found strength in this journey, share this video. Because truth deserves to be heard and healing deserves to be shared.